Good. I'm arguing with some people in your chat.
Oh boy.
Nobody seems to think that Nebraska has a chance at landing Dylan Raiola, but obviously it's a long shot. Obviously, Nebraska is the outlier of the final three schools that most people think he's going to go to. But I'm going to tell you guys a few things I learned.
Yep.
Well, he's visiting Nebraska this weekend, the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. That's 3 days. He visited Georgia last weekend, only 2 days. It's been on the record that Dylan has been on the phone with other recruits telling them to come with him to Nebraska. That's the reason why we're having so many of these 5-star and 4-star players come. I think that's 90% of the reason why they're even coming in the first place, to come visit, because he's the one calling them and telling the family that they need to come visit. Why would he be doing that? Why do you think a recruit would do that if he's not seriously considering Nebraska?
I don't have an answer for that because I think you're right. I don't think that means that he's necessarily coming, but it means that he's extremely serious.
Also, it was released yesterday. He's coming back for the Nebraska spring game, and he's bringing his entire family, like even his grandparents from Hawaii. His entire family is coming to the Nebraska spring game.
Well, once you say that, and I was going to say this even after the last bit of information you gave us before you said this, I was going to say this, while this does not prove anything, we don't know. Maybe it does prove something. Maybe that is indication of where he's going. I don't think it is on the surface, but he only knows what he's thinking and why he's doing these things. So that second statement, that's a very unique situation to have that kind of response to a spring game.
Yeah. And so I was at February 25th. He came to Nebraska. Like, it was just like that morning, people had pictures of him in the airport in Nebraska because he came to the Nebraska basketball game. It was a dead period, but since Donovan, our offensive line coach, is a family member, he could come during the dead period. He just couldn't talk to Matt Rule and the other coaches. So I was at the game. I could see where he was sitting. And for the first half, he was up in a suite, and it was like a suite divided in half, but you could like see over to the other side, It was Matt Rule, Coach Satterfield, our offensive coordinator, on one side. Then the other side was Donovan, Dylan, Dominic, and his brother. So there's literally air blocking them. They aren't legally allowed to talk to each other, but they were literally within 10 feet of each other. And Rule was up there yelling, "Go Big Red," and looking over at Dylan, and the whole crowd was yelling it back. And then at halftime, Dylan actually came down onto the floor, walked in front of the student section. Of course, the whole student section went crazy. But Dylan went, and Trev Alberts, the athletic director, and his wife, they sit courtside at every game. Trev Alberts and his wife gave up their seats for Dylan and his dad and Donovan to sit at their seats for the half. Then after the half, you could see I saw Dylan and his dad and his brother give Trev Alberts, our athletic director, the president of the university, Ted Carter, all gave him hugs before they left once the game was over. So I don't know what's that supposed to mean, but it was very odd. Like, why? Like, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to come to the basketball game if he didn't want to. And he didn't have to go walk in front and make himself known to everybody. I mean, the whole crowd was chanting his name at one point, and he stood up and threw the bones. I know it could just be all, I don't know. It's just I've never seen anything like what the support Dylan is getting, like when he comes to Nebraska. I mean, obviously he's number one quarterback, but he's kind of egging it on too, in my opinion.
And hopefully all of that's authentic. And even if he decides to go somewhere else, that doesn't mean that he was not sincere throughout all of this. But I think some of these student athletes obviously do take advantage of the situation and do take, and I want them to take advantage of the journey and take advantage of, the courting that they're not going to receive at any other time in their life unless they become some huge NFL free agent. And that's not even the same. So it's a once in a lifetime experience. So absolutely go to all these campuses, live it up, soak in the moment, be treated like a star, all of that. Absolutely. And that's not a bad thing. The only thing I'll say is that what you're saying about what's going on for the spring game, that one hits me the most because that's a bit different in terms of bringing the family with you from that type of distance to go to the spring game. I have not heard of that.
Yeah,
I will say that I liken this. Let's say he's full bore on doing all these things that you're stating and continues to do them. I kind of like it, but doesn't go to Nebraska. I liken that to, of course, the 5-star number one player Travis Hunter from a few years ago.
yeah,
Now he didn't have connection to Florida State, but he created his own connection to Florida State. And shoot, he was on campus as much as the current players. Like he was constantly holding camps there and showing up on campus and was Florida State full bore, and his Twitter was all Florida State, and he was wearing Florida State all the time, and he was recruiting players to Florida State. And then Dion stepped in, and
yeah.
now that is probably a pretty unique situation, but I think you give a lot of good indicators, and it is an interesting uh, it's an interesting decision in that the other two have such obvious tangible advantages. But hey, if he loves it at Nebraska and he's got the legacy there and he's got all of that in terms of a connection, that can't be measured.
Yeah, I feel like it really comes down to what Dylan like. Does he like obviously coming to Nebraska? I mean, he's already a celebrity when he walks into Nebraska. The moment he got off the airplane in Omaha, there was everybody in the state knew he was here. You don't go to Athens, Georgia, and the whole state knows he's there, and within 5 minutes of him landing. So if I like, I'm only 20, but he's probably 17 or 18. Imagine what that's like to have a whole state. That's a lot of pressure on a kid like him. So maybe he doesn't want that pressure, and I could see that being a reason why he doesn't come here because
Well,
the pressure he
he's
would
gonna
have
have
here is
pressure at the
intense.
other two places. It's just gonna be different. Of
Oh,
course, if
I think it's
when
way
he lands
different.
at LAX, nobody cares.
No,
But of course, within that LA Coliseum, then it becomes his domain. It becomes that he's the 5-star quarterback at USC, and there's something there. And then if they win, then they maybe grab some headlines from the Lakers and the Dodgers and all that. It but they just treat him as another, okay, this is another quarterback target. Like he's a
yeah,
savior at Nebraska. He is,
he's like the chosen child.
yes,
He's like the biggest recruit since Tommy Frazier, and I know
yeah,
that's kind of crazy to say, but
yeah. And Georgia's football crazy, and Georgia's Georgia, and they love football just about as much as anywhere. But again, they've got 3 quarterbacks in their quarterback room that are
and they're
close to his
actively
status.
so Dylan is the only quarter. Well, I guess we offered another 2024, but Dylan is the only quarterback there actively recruiting. But you see, Georgia's putting in offers for 2024 quarterbacks. USC has a couple offers for 2024 quarterbacks, and that was one of the reasons, speculated reasons, why he decommitted from Ohio State was because of the Lincoln Kineholes, I think is how you say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They offered him when they said he was going to be the only quarterback that they took. So I don't know. Yeah, all I know is for a fact, Dylan is the one and only quarterback Nebraska is targeting, and they're willing to sacrifice not having a quarterback in this class. If he, like, they're just not looking at anybody else, and USC and Georgia are. So.
Well, that's all really good information. So I appreciate you stopping by, Cole, and letting us know about all that because it gives certainly some different things to think about. I gave the generic checklist of
Yeah,
what the typical bullet point list of considerations is. You gave real life situations and responses and all of that
and
concerning him in particular. So that's great stuff.
I'll leave in a minute, but okay. One, Penn State is not going to fire Ben Franklin next year. Two, James Franklin. Two, they're not going to fire James Franklin and then pay out Rule's $80 million contract 1 year in. So everybody, so the guy that's saying that in your chat is just, that's not going to happen.
What is he saying?
He's saying if James Franklin loses to OSU and Michigan again, he's going to get fired, and then Penn State's going to hire Matt Rule.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he understands didn't James Franklin just sign an extension last year?
Yes.
So
A
they have to
massive
buy out.
extension.
They have to buy out that and buy out Rule's, what is it, 80 to 90 million contract. That's just not going to happen. No school has that much money. That's like Jimbo money we're talking.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about Texas A&M in particular, and at what point there's going to be a breaking point to that. Because if Wisconsin can cough up $15 million, and if Auburn can cough up, Auburn can do it twice
Yeah.
in the span of a few years, and Florida State had to do it twice within the span of 3 or 4 years. So we're talking upwards of 30 to 35 million. With Texas's resources, maybe 50 million is going to be 30 million to them. So they go ahead and do it.